Hi. In the previous video, we built up the backend for our password authentication. So let me just redo that. In the previous video, we built up the backend for our password authentication. In this video, we'll dive into the front end and build that up in you. So in some of the previous videos, we've built up the entire wallet, and now we want to do the authentication part where you can enter a password and start working on we'll start working on making sure that we have encrypted passwords stored at the backend so you can move it across computers with ease. And let's just dive right into it. So getting back to our terminal, I think the first thing we want to do is just to validate that our backend program is running the way that we want it to. And so we see here it is. And if you recall, in the previous video, we built up the password API, we built up the password app, and now we are going to move into the screens. Let's see. And one question I have here is, did we actually install the service? Oh, we didn't. Okay, so we have a little bit of work to do on the backend before we get into the front end. So one thing we haven't done yet is we haven't added the backend into the actual wallet server. So you'll see here we have the Auth service, but we don't have any Auth password app. So let's start out by fixing that. The first thing we want to do is add the password here. Just copying this one. And then this might well start causing some problems for when we're running. Auth password app. So why is it complaining? Oh, right. Because this one needs to have underscore password as well for it to work. Okay, so that works. We then need to make sure we are exporting the handlers here. And so if you recall, in our handlers, we have this app that defines the routes, and that's the one we're going to export, so this will be exposed on the backend side, on the backend API. We also want to export the service. Okay, so we have forgotten to add all the dependencies to the password. Let's just fix that. Right, and Redis, we went over this yesterday. I just forgot to save the file, which is why we're doing it again here now. But Redis goes out. We don't need that one. I think that's about it. While we wait for that to finish, let's just finish the main implementation. And so what we do here is we make the password service available to all the layers of the app, and we also add the password routes. Right, and we need to add the API to this one. Oh wait, I feel like these were the wrong dependencies we copied across. Let's just try that again. See, we have argon2, password hash, and all the other ones that we used yesterday. So that should be fine. Let's see how this is. Oh, did we not add? Oh my goodness, we did not add argon2 to the workspace. Let's just do that. And probably we also need to add password. Let me just check that from my notes. Yeah, password hash should be living in the workspace. Let's check if it does. It doesn't. So we need to add the password hash. Let's see, verify credentials. This is not what we called it. Verify password, update password, create. So we still are missing one function here. We need to have a way to get the user. Password is valid. Well, actually this one does the whole thing, doesn't it? And what does it return? Okay, but that one we use in an auth service. That's the one we want to fix. Right, and this one, get user by username. So basically we need to update this and implement get user by username for this to work. So let's just jump back into our handlers here and fix that. So we want to get user by username. We're doing the body.email. And getting back to, so we'll have to go back to our original authentication app and just implement this function, get user by username. So this ought to be relatively straightforward. Let's see. So basically what we will do is following. Just let get user equal SQLX query as, and then the resulting type will be a user. Select everything from auth users where username is equal to the first bound parameter. So we bind username, fetch as optional from the pool. Await map error. Actually, let's just put E here. Unlock error failed to get user. Then error response. This is an internal error. And finally, we unpack the user. So it's either a user or we're going to return a user not found. Let's just check this. This ought to be all right. Okay. Getting back to our implementation. We're now getting user by username, and then we are verifying the password using the password service. And if that's not valid, okay, it should all be fine. I mean, arguably, all of this ought to be wrapped up in a single service function. That's at least one thing we could do, although maybe it's okay to have this in the controller. Let's see. Right, and we need to import error response because we don't have that here. Oh, we do have that here. So what is it? Oh, I misspelled it. Okay. Right, we are missing a question mark here. So just as a reminder, the question mark basically means that if the result of this statement is an error, then we're going to return early and return that error directly. Okay. Then let's go back to the handlers. We need to remember to save this one, and then we should be good to go. Get user by user found. Okay, we need an ampersand. So basically it's complaining that we have a self or a owned string, and we want to turn that into a, I don't know what you would call it, a C-like string where it's basically just a char array. All right, so we have the backend now fully integrated. The API handlers are there, and we're ready to now start implementing the front end. This has set us back about 15 minutes from what I originally planned, so it may be we don't get as far with the front end as I was hoping for, but such is life. Okay. Okay, the first thing we want to do in the password screens is just introduce a bit of structure. So we're going to make a components module, and inside of that one we're going to make a few different files. So we're going to make a mod.is to make sure that it's a module. Then we'll make a layout.is, which has the overall layout of our login and logout components and reset password and whatever else we will want to have there in the future. Then we're going to have a login page. Actually, we should probably make that under pages. Let's make that pages, and then we're moving login there, and we're going to make a mod.is, and likewise we're going to do a signup.is and a thank you for signing up rs. Then inside the components we will have our login form, and we will have our sign up form. Then if we start out by just creating the login layout, as you will recall from the previous videos, we're using U for this, and U has this macro called function component. We'll call this login layout, what we now. And so such a function component is simply just a function that takes some properties and return HTML. And so HTML is a U type, and inside of here we are just going to make a base layout, and that base layout will have some children that will render inside it. We will also, as usual, need to import U, and we will need to define our properties. And so these need to be defined as properties. So properties is a derivative we get from U, and partial EQ is a standard derivative that makes structs comparable. Okay, that was our layout. Then let's write this one out immediately. Layout. Login form. And sign up form. Likewise, let's write this one out. That one has a login and sign up. And then it has a thank you. This one, pub mod pages, pub mod components. We're just going to re-export everything. Pub use pages star, pub use component star. Okay. So far, so good. Let's grab onto the easier ones. So thank you page is basically just going to be something similar to what we have done before. It's again a function component. And inside of it, we are just going to have some complete trivial HTML. So there's nothing to it, no logic or anything like that. It's basically just rendering this HTML saying, okay, your wallet is ready. Yeah, your Ethereum wallet has been created. Please check your email account to verify your account and start managing your assets. And so actually this bit we are not going to do. We're not going to make email verification. This could be an extension that we would be doing, but we're not doing that. That would be out of scope for what we're doing here. Right, and then we have a button that allows you to log in afterwards and test your password. So that's pretty much it. Let's have a look, because together with this, we want to have some more generic auth screens as well. So these screens that we're working on down here are all related to the password, but we also want to have some generic screens that are independent of how do you actually log in. And so let's start out by those ones and say, well, we're going to have, again, a components directory. And inside the components directory, we'll want to have login required. We want to have a mod.is, and that is it. And so the login required is going to be more advanced than any of the stuff we've done before, because we want to make this templated such that it's reusable across different apps. So this is a bit similar to TypeScript generics, but we're now doing it for components. Let's just copy the dependencies over so we can get started with the good stuff. Okay, and so the first thing we're doing is we're deriving our properties of this component. And again, these needs to be comparable. And then we are going to make these this is going to be templated, because we want to have the properties depend on what type of route. So every time you make a new application, you will be using a different set of routes. And so we can't stick with a single set of routes. Instead, we are going to make it templated such that it's independent of the app config. It's independent of everything else. We can just copy this application across. Right, and so the template parameter is R, and that one should be routable. This is a property inside of uRouter. It should be clonable, it should be comparable, and we want it to be static. And so the children, it will have children, and it will also have a fallback route. And so the fallback route is the route that we will go to in case that we aren't authenticated. If that makes sense, right? So we're having this wrapper component inside it. We have things that are protected by the login. And what we will do is we'll check, is the user authenticated? If the user is authenticated, we'll show the children. Otherwise, we'll redirect to the fallback route. And again, the function for the function component itself also needs to use this generic parameter. And again, with exactly the same properties, it needs to be routable, clonable, comparable, and static. And props are going to be exactly this. And then we need to use two components inside here. We're going to use our Auth store and we're going to use Navigator. So the Auth store we're going to use for checking if the user is authenticated. If it's not, we're going to use the Navigator to navigate to somewhere else. Right. And in order to do that, we're going to use effect. And remember that in Rust, we are always moving things unless we have defined the copy operator. It's very rare that we would ever define the copy operator. And this means that we need to manually clone things. This gives a very high level of control. It also makes that you do need to write a little bit more code than you would in a corresponding TypeScript or React application. Actually, let's just do like this. Okay. The last bit we're doing is we're checking if the user was authenticated. If the user is authenticated, we are returning the HTML containing the children. If the user is not authenticated, we're just returning nothing. And so that means that if the user is not authenticated, this will render into an empty component, and then use effect will make sure that we are redirecting the user. Good. Next step is, together with this, we need to define this authentication store. And this is again a general auth component. It's not password specific. So we're going to leave that in the auth screens and not in the password screens. And so this store should be working with either the password or Google login or one-time passwords or whatever you want to do. And so if you recall from our previous videos, we did another store for the wallet itself. And so you'll know that we'll need to have actions. We'll need to define the module file. And we'll need to define a state file. Right, and inside this one, it's as simple as can be. We're going to define the modules, action, and state, and then we're doing pub use actions, and what would we call these ones? So we would have two functions here. So we're going to make a hook use of check and of action. Actually, probably will not need this one. Let's skip that for now. That's something we can do at a later point. And likewise, we're going to have a state, and that is just use state of store. Okay, if we start out by the state will consist of a state that holds the user, contains the user. It will need to be serializable and deserializable, and we're using UDOCs for this. So that means that we need to import the API, we need to import cert, we need to import UDOCs, and we need to first and foremost set our dependencies and just making sure that they are set correctly. So we're here making sure that we have websys, UDOCs router, and a bunch of others. Glue console we're not going to use. We would use log instead. And that's about it. Then with that, we are ready to do the actual state. Let's just have a look here. This should actually cause a compile error in just a bit, but it somehow didn't. But this, all right, no, it doesn't because we haven't defined this lib here. So we're going to do pub mod components, pub mod store, pub use components, and we're just re-exporting everything. We're re-exporting everything from the store as well. And that is about it for this bit. Right. Okay. And first thing we will do in the actions is just import the things that we're going to need. And this will assume that we have a store and we have a check of check state. We'll get back to those ones in just a bit. Or actually, maybe we want to define those ones first, but let's just go ahead and define the actions we want to do. This will help us inform what we want to have in the actual store. Get current user. That's at least something that we will need. So we want to be able to submit an event that goes and fetches the latest user. This will help us understand, are we logged in, are we not logged in? Then we will have a responder action for that, which optionally sets a user. We will have a logout action, and we will need a set error action. And I think that's about it for the actions. Then this will inform what we will do for the state. So first of all, we want to have a auth check state, which is just telling us where are we in the process. Are we currently in the process of checking something for the user? Like, are we fetching the data? Are we authenticated? Are we unauthenticated? So this would be the core thing that we want to check. And so in order to do that, we will add a default value to this, which is that the default is that we are in the process of loading. Then we want to have authenticated and unauthenticated. And these are pretty much the main states that we will want to have. Then we're going to define the store itself. And unlike the previous thing we did, we are going to add an additional macro here, which is store storage equal local. Now what this will do, so store is a macro that's defined inside of Udocs, and what this will do is it will automatically save your state into the local storage of your browser, which means that once we're logged in, it will persist with this storage, which is super useful. Okay, then the auth store itself contains a user and it contains an error. And that is about it for that. Finally, we are going to just implement a couple of helper functions here. So let me just remind myself what we have actually done. We have this username, we have the role, and so basically we want to be able to check two things, right? We want to be able to check the role of the user, and we want to be able to check if the user is authenticated. Arguably, we will only use if the user is authenticated, but in a more advanced version of this, and as an exercise for you, you could implement a role required in the components, which would be a wrapper for making sure that you only allow admins to view this particular view. And so the way we check this is simply just to see if the user object is set. And if it's set, we are logged in. Right. Likewise, you could implement something like this. We have the information in the user object, but I will leave this as an exercise to you to do. Okay, this is pretty much it for state. Then here comes the actions we want to take. So we already defined the actions, and now we're going to define the reducer for the action. And for that one, we're going to implement apply. And so just like the last time, we are going to create a new state from the original state, which is what we'll be manipulating. We will also need to have a dispatcher. And so in this case, we are using a different approach to what we did in the previous video, just to show you a few different ways to do it. We're just using the global dispatcher for the auth store. And finally, we want to get the base URL. And so the base URL we are defining in our app config. So the base URL is what we will be adding to in front of the actual API UI to make sure that we are calling the right place. So unlike when you're doing things in a web browser, we need to make sure that we always have the base URL covered in a U application. And so the reason for this is that we don't know whether this will compile on a front end or back end, and this means that we are not automatically adding the window URL. And so the libraries like request and things like that can't make that assumption, and they will not automatically figure that out. That's up to you to make sure that that's done correctly. Okay, with that said, we are going to match self. So we are matching self on the actions that we have, let's just copy those ones. We have them up here. Oh, and there's something here that needs to be fixed. And then finally, we are going to return our new state down here. Oh, wait, well, actually, let's see. Yeah, state. And let's do the easy ones first. If error, oh, are we missing that one up here? I see we are. Let's fix that. And then this needs to be translated into error, and this needs to be translated into user. And so if there is if there is an error, we will log the user out and just set email to none, user to none, and say that we are unauthenticated. And then we'll add the state error equals error. Logout is doing exactly the same. Starting out by setting these to none, and then we're going to spawn a local async block. So what this block will do is we'll create a client inside it, and with that one we will invoke the logout handler that we implemented in one of the previous videos. And for good measure, let's match on the result. If the result was okay, then it's fine. We're just going to return unit, and otherwise we're going to dispatch a set error, something went wrong. Okay, set user is another really easy one to implement. So that one we are going to do state that user equals user, and then if, oh wait, there is something wrong here. This should be parentheses. And if the user is authenticated, we're going to do state.check state equal auth check state authenticated. Else unauthenticated. Cool. And then get current user. This is the last thing we want to implement, and arguably the largest one of them. Right, so just like the previous bit, we're going to start out by creating a async context where we have a client, and just like the previous one, we're going to use that client to get a result and just checking what is my user from the base URL. Okay, so once we have that, we're going to check whether we succeeded or failed. So if the result is giving you okay, then we have a result or response we can start looking at, and otherwise we're going to set an error. And then the first thing we want to check is, did the response produce a status code 200? In case not, we're going to pass or match the error state. say, okay, well, if this is an error response, we will take that to set the error message. If not, we're going to make a new error message saying that there is an API error here. Okay, great. This leaves us with the last block to make, and that is that we are going to pass the JSON from the response as a user. Then we're waiting for that. And if we get an okay, so this actually succeeded, the passing of the user, we're going to set the user. Otherwise, we're going to set an error message saying that we couldn't pass the response. And this is pretty much it as far as the actions go. And this implements the core screens that we want to have for our authentication. So we can now gate views with our login required. We have a store for checking whether the user is logged in and keeping track of that. And we have actions for initiating checking if the user was logged in. We have actions for logging out the user. And so really all we need now is the password views to allow us to use those things to log in and out. And we've created the base structure for this. And so with that, we are out of time in today's video. But in the next video, we are going to continue the work and finish out the password screens, and we're going to integrate that into the main view, into the main application, and set it all up so you can log in with your password. You can set, your user state will be set, and you can log out again. I hope you enjoyed the video, and with that, I hope to see you in the next one.